Some of you may know this story, some of you may not know this story, but I started working here in 2000. That's when I moved here, January of 2000. Before I got things started, I wanted to just clear my head. And so what I did is I took a month off and I went to Boulder, Colorado, and I spent the summer with my brother. And while I was out there, he challenged me to do this hike to the top of Long's Peak. And it's about a 7.5-mile hike to a 14,000-foot summit. My brother's a professional rock climber. And at one point, he was one of the top 4 or 5 in the world. And he does the crazy stuff with the ropes and on the ledges and all that stuff. So anyway, he challenged me to do this hike, and I was excited about it. So I started working out, and I started training and eating right and doing all these fancy things to get prepared for it. And I took it really seriously because I don't like to be shown up by anybody, but I certainly don't want to be shown up by my little brother. I went out to Colorado, learned how to fly fish. And by the end of the month, my brother said, okay, let's do this hike. We'll do it in a couple days. So near the end of July, he said, I'll pick you up on Thursday. I'll pick you up at midnight. In hindsight, I never even considered asking why we would start at midnight. And I don't know why I didn't think to ask that question at the time, but I didn't. And so I just went along with it, thinking, well, maybe it's a long drive to where we're going. I don't know. Well, he picked me up a little bit late. He picked me up around 1 o'clock in the morning, and then around 1:45-ish, something like that, we were at the base of this mountain. And everybody in this parking lot is getting out of these cars, and they've got these little headlamps on because it's dark out. There's tons of people there. And so we start this hike. The trail starts at around 9,000 feet, which is pretty high altitude, and you start trudging along this path in the dark with these tiny little lamps. They look like little elves, actually, walking through the woods. We got to the top of this mountain at around 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. So it took me about 9 hours to go 7.5 miles. So we walked less than 1 mile an hour. Pretty good, huh? We finally get to the top of this summit, and there isn't a single cloud in the sky. I mean, it was one of the most remarkable views I've ever seen. A bunch of people are all spread out camping. They've got everything, they got like their little picnics, and they're sitting there. And before I get a chance to even finish my pizza, he's already starting to trot down the other side of the mountain, like he's ready to go. And I'm like, hey, where are you going? We just got here. He's like, listen, we got to go. Come on. So he starts to prounce down the mountain, and I'm picking everything up, and I start scrambling after him. Of course, I had a few words, thoughts and words for him along the way. About 3 minutes into the descent, I realized immediately that I had really made some errors in my training because I had spent the whole time trying to get to the top of the mountain, making sure that I made it to the summit, making sure that I made it to the peak, thinking that's when I'll know that I made it there. That's how I won't get shown up by my kid brother. But I hadn't put any thought into what you do once you get there. Like, in other words, it's much more difficult physically to go down the mountain in some cases. And so I had only trained to get to the top of the mountain. I hadn't done anything to get back down the mountain. I caught up to my brother 2 hours later at 12,000 feet. And I come around the corner, and there he is. He's all relaxed. He's on this big flat rock, and he's eating more of his little nuts and berries and everything else. And I sit down next to him, and I go, what's the rush? And he said, well, now we don't have to rush. We can relax and enjoy ourselves a little bit. And I said, well, that's fine, but the view is up there. And he said, no, the success on this trip isn't measured on whether or not you make it to the top of the mountain. The success on this trip is measured by whether or not you make it back down safely. And he pointed up to the top of the mountain, and I looked up there, and there was nothing but black clouds. And what he knew that I didn't know was that every day at 12 or 12:30, the top of the mountain acts as a magnet, and it attracts these electrical storms. Now, when we were up there, wasn't a cloud in the sky, but we left as quick as we did so that we could avoid it. And I started thinking to myself, what are all the people that are up there doing right now? And he said, well, right now, those people are in a lot of trouble because they're scrambling, and they're making a lot of decisions under stress. And they're trying to get down this mountain, and it was not an easy mountain by any stretch. He said, it's the worst time to be making decisions. Usually when you want to measure the success on a trip like this, you have to have the planning in advance. And I said, well, how did you even know that this was this happened? And he said, well, that's easy. Last summer, I was on the face of the mountain, rock climbing with my friends, hanging from that ledge, and the storm rolled in, and I didn't think I was going to make it. So he and his friends got stuck on the face of that mountain for 4 hours while the storm hit. And so for the rest of the walk down, which was about 5 miles, I thought about what the trip meant to me. First of all, I'd never done anything like that before. And secondly, I really drew the parallel and the comparison to what a lot of you do and what a lot of my clients do and a lot of the planning that I do for retirees. And that is, when you're saving and accumulating to get to retirement, that's like climbing to the top of a mountain. You do all this planning and saving and sacrificing, and you raise kids and you put them through college and help them get married and divorced in some cases and married again. And you go through all the challenges that you go through in life, and it's just like one step in front of the other. Can I make it to the top? Will I ever have enough to retire? And very few people put a lot of thought into what you're going to do once you get there. And I promise the strategies that get you to retirement, when you're saving every 2 weeks, and the sacrifices and the investing strategies that you use, the strategies that you use to get there are not always going to be the best strategies to help you get back down. Because the risks that you face once you get to the top of the mountain are different than the ones on the way up. If you trip at the bottom of the mountain, you brush yourself off and you get back up. If you trip at the top of the mountain, the falls can be a little bit more penal and harder to recover from. And so what we help people do is we help people navigate the risks associated with reaching retirement. So we work with people that are nearing retirement or near the summit, but we take a look at what some of the challenges might be once you get there.